Hello, and welcome to Autistically, Unapologetic, the unfiltered and unmasked podcast about everything autism. Here's your host, Devin Morrissey.
Hi, and welcome to Autistically Unapologetic with me, Devin Morrissey. I want to officially welcome everyone to episode 4, where today I'm going to be talking a little bit about autism acceptance and awareness through self-discovery. Now, as many people may already know or may not know, I was officially diagnosed at the age of 3. Now, I found out that I was autistic at the age of 12, right before I was heading into middle school. And I gotta be honest, as I mentioned before, it was not the easiest journey for me to fully accept myself for who I was. All throughout my preteen years, my middle school years, and my high school years, I really struggled with trying to fit in, not just with other people, but really trying to fit in with myself. When you've worked your whole life to try to be normal and then realize that that's never gonna happen, it was a really devastating blow for a 12-year-old boy like myself at that time. I eventually decided to disclose my autism diagnosis to the world when I was a freshman in college. And to be honest with you, it was one of the most liberating experiences that I ever had in my life. Being able to talk about my autism so openly and honestly was just the beginning of so many doors to open my direction. As a result, though, however, I've always wondered about other people's journeys to self-discovery and self-acceptance, particularly with autism. And I was so impressed about how today's special guest, who is a best-selling author and multi-award-winning international presenter, has been so open and honest about herself being autistic and her life story. She is the author of 9 best-selling books. She is also a Wall Street Journal Bestseller. She's a Publisher's Weekly best-selling book winner. And she's also has 6 of the BookAuthority's best-selling, best memoir, and top autism books of all time picks. After graduating from Brown and Columbia University, she's currently sitting on the Autism Society of America's Council for Autistic Advisors. She also consults for Congress's Autism Research Panel, and she is a multi-award-winning international presenter who has presented all over the world. She's also the current dating coach on the U.S. version of Netflix's and Northern Pictures' Love on the Spectrum. She's going to be sitting right here with me as I discuss a little bit more about her books and how her own life story became the inspiration for her current subject material. She's going to be sharing tips and tricks and pieces of advice for every single autistic person out there, whether they're in a relationship, whether they're married, or if they're still looking for love. Please welcome to Autistically Unapologetic, Jennifer Cook Banks.
Hey!
Hey, Devin, how are you?
I am well.
Good.
How are you?
Good. I'm going to turn up the volume a little on you because you can never have too much, Devin. I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for that really warm introduction. That was very sweet of you.
You are so welcome. You have such an amazing expertise, and you have such a resume. I had to try to get in as much as possible. And I would like to apologize if I didn't get more than I probably should have. But I think we're going to get into that a little bit. I am super excited to have you here. I don't think I've told you this over, in person, because we've actually never met in person, but you are a role model to so many autistic people out there, and you've consistently risen the bar of what autistic people can do. And I am so excited for you to be on here today to talk about your life story, some tips and tricks that you have, and to talk a little bit about your time on a show that I got to also do called
On The
Spectrum U.S. So I first wanted to start this off, Jennifer, by asking you, when did you first find out that you were autistic, and what was your reaction to that?
So it was 12 years ago.
Really?
And just 12 years ago. And it was, back then, it was an Asperger's diagnosis. So that made it a little bit different to come by, but basically my 3 kids had gotten diagnosed, and then yes, and so I just got to follow suit. So yeah, and what was it like for me? Well, it was very validating because I was the one who went to the therapist and was like, I think I know where this is coming from, kind of thing. And said, I relate to this, that, and the other thing, and what they're doing just makes sense to me. Here's why. Here's what it looks like, I think, maybe in my life. What do you think? And, at first she kind of didn't really know what to say. I think that she said, look to your psychiatrist to see if there's any pushback, and there really wasn't any. They both said that makes sense, just hadn't occurred to us, and that unfortunately is kind of the route that a lot of, especially women, follow down, right? So a lot of times, in fact, I'll in my memoir, one of the things I talked about was how I get a lot of bathroom conversations, which sounds strange to say.
Yes, I do remember you talking about that in the book.
It's true, though. People will follow me into the bathroom because I think people feel like you have like a very frank, equal discussion there, And it's a lot of times people coming thinking they're going to hear a talk about autism because it's about their son or their husband or their daughter, but their child, and then end up realizing, wow, I relate to this a lot myself. And that's sort of the journey, that it was for me. So for me, it was very validating in that sense, that my intuition was kind of on, and it made a lot of things in my life make sense. It's still something that gets questioned by a lot of people. It's interesting. Jody Rogers, who is the dating coach for Love on the Spectrum in Australia, when the U.S. show was about to come out, she and I had a conversation and sort of here's what to expect. And she said, one of the things you won't get any heckles for is you won't get any of the, she's, not autistic, so she doesn't know what she's talking about.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, she got that. I didn't, which was nice. But I definitely got a couple people going, oh, are you really autistic? And it's like, dude, but the hashtag, but you don't look autistic, should just be a thing, right?
God.
Come on, what's that even?
It is so annoying when that happens. I get that all the time. I'm like, I can easily pull up the autism diagnosis from a doctor that diagnosed me 3 years old and prove that I have no problem with that.
If you would like. That's funny. Yeah. And so, for me, it just made a lot of things kind of go, okay, all right, that makes sense in my life looking backwards,
And how old were you when you got diagnosed?
So I was 35.
35.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up. Did you notice any signs looking back now to when you may have noticed that you were autistic?
Right. You know what? Basically, no, they so there was definitely kind of something different, but they attributed it to me being very bright and also being an only child. So that a lot of times I would sound more like a little adult, right? Which we know that a lot of ASPE kind of kids, that's a profile, but they just thought it was because I was mostly around adults, which made sense, right? And same with the vocabulary that I would use. It was, just she's bright. That's all it is. But definitely, I related more to adults than I did to other kids, and I loved getting lost in my books and the other worlds and the topics and all that good stuff. I can look back and see the special interests. They were there. So.
Yep. I mean, in other words, it's like this is our world and people are just living in it at this point. So many people already know this, but in case they didn't know and in case they've been living under a rock, you are a best-selling author and your books have gone on to massive, massive success, including the highly successful 2012 bestseller, The Asperkids Secret Book of Social Rules, where autistic teenagers are able to play the game of life. This time, though, with instructions and manuals, which I had that growing up. What inspired you to write this book that has still been this important autistic framework from more than a decade later?
You know what? That book was an accident. My first book was already in publication, but hadn't yet come out. And I was sitting with my own therapist. She said something. I jotted it down. She said, "What did you do?" And I said, "Well, that was a social rule. You don't realize it. It's like a rule. You guys know these things. I don't. So I'm just writing them down." And she said, "You got to make a book out of that." And I said, "Really? Seriously?" Put it together, pitched it to my publisher, and and she loved it. We had that. I've been very fortunate with the books. I have had a great relationship with, I've worked with 3 different publishers. And that's been, it's interesting to see how each company is very different. I get a lot of questions from prospective authors. So that's always one I kind of like to talk about. A lot of people who want to write their stories, want to know what should they do to put them out there. But yeah, so that book, that book changed. That book is now, let's see, it has sold over 100,000 copies, and I think that book alone is in like 6 different languages, which is nuts.
Incredible. That's incredible. Did you ever expect it to be in 6 languages?
Never. I mean, it was only today I found out that one of my memoirs is in Chinese. I didn't know that.
Oh, are you serious? In Chinese?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Whoa.
So it's. Nobody tells me these things, but
I know it's like they wish that you wish that they could, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna find out for myself. It's not
like, I've even looked up like translations of, and nope, they don't tell me so. Anyway, but I would say it to that question of what people ask frequently about if they want to put their own stories out there. What tips would I give to that to aspiring authors? And that's definitely make sure that whatever you're saying hasn't been said before. I think a lot of times people kind of just want to tell their story. There are a lot of similarities to stories. You have to make sure that whatever you're saying is unique. It hasn't been said before, that there's a point of view that you're taking that's different, and that there are going to be takeaways from the story that a publisher is going to say, hey, this is unique and this is different. Let's do something with it.
Absolutely. And speaking of memoirs, in starting this podcast, I have to say this again. I have had the utmost respect for you and your journey and really what it means to blaze the trail or blaze your trail on your own terms. Now, I've had the opportunity to read your best-selling memoir, Autism in Heels, and was really absolutely blown away by your take on being autistic because, as you mentioned, autism has been primarily diagnosed in boys and men and has really gone undiagnosed in women and girls for many, many years. What made you decide that you wanted to take your own journey of struggles, revelations, and eventual self-discovery and share that with the world? Because coming from someone that's also autistic, it's never easy to do.
No, it's definitely not. So John Elder Robeson, who's a name you probably know, who wrote, Look Me in the Eye. So he's a colleague of mine, and we had met on one particular occasion, and he said, there really needs to be like the way he put it was a girl's version of this, some kind of story, right? Some kind of story. There weren't too many memoirs out there that I guess were talking about autism in a way that wasn't a typical classical presentation of autism, right? So if you thought of autism and girls or women, you tended to think more along the lines of like a Temple Grandin, right? Yeah, So she, and her autism. It's neat because she really liked heels, but we're very different women. But then again, that's kind of the point, right? Like there's lots of room for all sorts of people on the spectrum, right? So, but basically, yeah, it was his idea. He said you should put this into. It's funny now that I'm like answering your questions. I'm hearing myself a lot of times saying, "Well, this person said that should be a book. This person said that should be a book." And each time it's not my own idea. It's I guess I find it hard sometimes to know what it is that I know that others don't know.
Yes. And that's
Does
the
that
power.
make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a power in yourself, because you've lived through so much and you've seen it, all over. And it's interesting that you bring it up because people think that autism is the same for everybody. It is not. It is so diverse. It is all over, and I think that's what the beauty of autism is, that it's all over and you see it everywhere. Okay. And one of your current projects that I am beyond excited about is your collaboration with a little street called Sesame Street. Your new,
so excited about this.
Your new book, My Friend Julia, a Sesame Street book about autism. Hey!
I'm so excited about this.
Your new book, My Friend Julia, a Sesame Street book about autism, will be coming out in September. And since Julia has become this, not just this groundbreaking Muppet, but also this amazing representation that so many autistic kids and adults can look up to. What has that experience been like? helping to share Julia's story more to kids and to adults everywhere.
Yes. Oh my gosh. If you think I don't take this one seriously, Devin, this was like, okay, I thought as the books have gone on, they've gotten harder to write. Like the first book I wrote, Asperkids, I wrote in 6 weeks. Okay, it was just like, boom, here's a book. Okay, and it worked, and it was, and the same thing with the rule book. I mean, that was an 8-week project. It just came flying out. I found the memoir harder to write, I will be very honest. This book, I found super hard to write. Why? Because the responsibility of putting words into the mouths of like Cookie Monster and Elmo and people, like,
Oh
this
my
is,
God.
right? Like, this is serious
They're
stuff.
legends. They're legends.
It's canon, right? You know? So for me, this has been, this has been an honor. And all joking aside, explaining what autism is to another adult is hard enough, but trying to boil what does autistic mean down for something that a child, grades K through 3, that's tough. And I really, my absolute insistence was that I didn't want it to be like, here's all the friends and here's Julia. Isn't it nice we include her and she happens to be autistic? Like, no, none of that. It reminds me back to elementary school when everybody had to be invited to the party. So that's what inclusion seems to me to be a lot of times. Now I don't want that. Nobody wants to be the kid that has to be invited to the party, right? And so for Julia, I wanted it to be really obvious that that everybody wanted her to be their friend. Yeah. And there was and that Julia, just like everybody else, there was something a little bit different and something a little bit the same about every, kid or every Muppet. And so this is probably the project about which I am the most, I say that about each project though. So, but I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about Julia. Yeah,
I know.
So.
I couldn't be more excited for you that you're collaborating with Sesame Street on this, because what they have done is take autism and really make this beautiful character out of it. And it's been amazing. I'll never forget, I was just out of college working. I came home from work and I watched the episode that Julie was on, and I just had tears rolling down my eyes, just being like, I could only wish that my 3-year-old, 4-year-old self had this when we were little. Because all we had back in the day was Dustin Hoffman and Raymond. That was it. And now to have a Muppet on Sesame Street that knows exactly what we're going through, it's absolutely amazing. And the fact that you've been able to collaborate with Sesame Street on this amazing project. When does it officially come out?
It's either the 5th or the 7th. I know Amazon, sometimes I check the Amazon pre-order date to see, but I think the 7th is the right date, because that's when the press release is going out. So it's September 7th. Yeah. So very excited about that. Yeah. It really is. That was I slapped around like a little kid when I heard from them and I got that request. That was a big deal. So. Yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, you can't say no to Sesame Street.
No!
That's accepting an invite to the White House. You can't turn that down. Now, because of your amazing expertise and your knowledge, you have been able to help thousands, if not millions, of autistic people get better access to hidden social rules and regulations. Now, your work has taken you all over Europe and even the White House. What has been one of the proudest moments so far in your professional career?
It was not when I spilled water on the floor of the White House and being the mom that I am, can I have napkins? I have to clean up, right? So that was not it. I will tell you that. It was also not when I skipped across the stage in front of royalty in England, because that is what one does.
Wait, which royalty?
This was, so twice. It was the Princess of Denmark and then also Queen Elizabeth's daughter-in-law.
Oh my God.
So Princess Sophie. Yeah. So because that is what one does at 8 o'clock in the morning when one is an American and one is like, let's just be fun. And so that is what I did. But it's what am I most proud of? In very different ways. I think I'm probably one of the projects that I'm most proud of is definitely the Sesame Street one. I mean, it really is, because like you said, there is a gravitas, there is a seriousness, a weight to Sesame Street, right? Like, it is iconic. And so to have a little teeny bit of that, I mean, I remember watching the Thanksgiving Day parade and watching Julia in the parade, and all the Muppets have on their earmuffs, but she's got on noise canceling headphones, right? Like, that you wouldn't know unless you know, right? Like, if you know, you know. And I'm all like, I know, so I know. And so yeah. And of course, let's be honest, Love on the Spectrum was so exciting and fun. You know, that was a blast. That was a complete blast. Golly bless me. But I think that we only film in like crazy weather. Every time I was there, it was either really hot or really cold for season 1 or 2. So yeah, so it's but yeah, very exciting. So I feel like each new project, this is my ADD, right? Like, I could not keep doing the same thing that I'm doing. Each new thing it feels like something powerful. Like, in 2 weeks I do this every year, this congressional oh geez, there's just too many letters and I can never remember. It's like the A, B, C, B, B. No, yeah. It is working for Congress to help them decide what grant money goes to autism research. I mean, I get to do that. Like, that's so amazing, right? It's each thing that I get to do, I feel very, very privileged, because it feels like that's so amazing, you know. So I've been very, very lucky. Yeah.
That is amazing. Now, you've been able to play part in a little project for Netflix that I also got to be a supporting cast member on, which is Love on the Spectrum U.S. Now, for those of you that obviously do not know, Love on the Spectrum is an Australian reality TV show surrounding the lives of autistic individuals as they encounter love, dating, relationships, you name it. Now, the original Australian version premiered on Netflix in November of 2019. Now, Jennifer, did you get a chance to watch the original lots? And if so, what were your thoughts?
I definitely did, and I loved it. Well, yeah, I loved it, you know, I had been approached in the past to maybe look at some different television projects, and I just felt like I'm going to use this phrase, and you know, whatever, quote me, don't quote me. Sometimes I think there's an angle out there that's almost like a disability porn. Like, let's just watch the autistics do this, watch the people do this, right? Like, and it's upsetting at the very least, right? And I didn't want to be part of that. So that was such a neat thing, because the first time I watched Lots, it was so not that. It was so respectful and, you know, friendly and real. And so that was super exciting. And I got to talk to the producers. Well, I guess the first time I talked to the producers was when they were first about to launch season 2 in Australia. And yeah, they were asking at that point if I knew different people in the States that they might start to interview, you know, to be on the show.
Yes,
right.
I vividly remember that. I vividly remember that through my talks with a certain friend of mine who then went on to be a part of the show. Her entire family kept me in the loop on that, which is so nice. I'm like, you should totally do it. Now, after 2 successful seasons in Australia and a massive audience reaction around the world, Netflix and Northern Pictures, as we all know, decided to bring Love on the Spectrum to the United States. How were you approached to be the dating advisor and coach for the show?
Right. So, like I said, I had spoken to them once while they were still, you know, in Australia. And then, honestly, I guess I made an impression and didn't realize that I was being interviewed, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know,
hidden interview.
Yeah, it totally was. It totally was. So when they came to me, you know, they just wanted to talk to me more about the idea, about what I thought about the show, but it wasn't directly be on the show. But I realized that's what they were doing. This was just this very subtle, that this you know, autistic person missed the subtlety is what was happening. So, you know, so I got to do a fly out to Nashville to do an on-camera kind of test. That didn't end up being on the show, but I guess it went very well. and there we were. So it all happened pretty fast. And everybody was so lovely the whole time. It was just from behind the scenes and all, because the casting had to get approved by Netflix.
They definitely did.
Yeah, and so it was, above and beyond just Kian and the team. It was also the Netflix had to approve it. But they were so very positive and saying kind of, no, you're who we want, and we think that's what's going to be best. And there we went. And so it was great. Yeah.
And I think what was amazing about you being on the show was that you really had amazing key techniques for everybody on the show, no matter where they were, whether they were here in Southern California, whether they were in Boston, whether in San Francisco, or whether in South Carolina. Your entire life and your expertise was so important and inspirational for the 6 main cast members to, get, because obviously, everyone on the spectrum wants to find love, and it's honestly not easy. I mean, I found love myself outside of the show. And quite frankly, I don't, and it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And every time I talk about my girlfriend, I just like blush inside and just get so excited, because it's like, I would have never thought that on the show, I would say, I got myself a 4th date coming up, same girl, would end up actually being my girlfriend 2 years later. It's a full circle moment. And it's amazing. Now, love is something that is not easy for anyone. And as we all know, it's not particularly easy for us autistic people. And it can be a lot harder. Now, here's reality.
Yeah.
Not everyone has to go on a dating show in order to find their perfect match, as you and I both have done. So I'd love to hear a few minutes from you about some tips and tricks that you have for finding love.
Sure. You know what? I think that, and Devin, I bet you're going to I know this is going to resound with you, right? The thing is that I think a lot of times people are looking for love before they want to be able to sustain a romantic relationship before they can have a friendship, but you can't do it that way. If you don't yet have some good practice maintaining, sustaining friendships, you can't jump ahead and say, okay, but now I'm going to have a relationship. You really have to start with negotiating, navigating friendship first. Once you've gotten pretty good at that, that's when you can then move up the ladder, if you will, or climb the pyramid kind of thing. And then add the complications, because it's more complicated once you add intimacy, once you add frequency, once you add the fact that there's only the 2 of you involved, right? There's a lot more complications. And so you've got to already get down how to be a good friend before you can move on. So that's the first one. And the second thing is, go out there and try your interests. It's so funny how I was telling some young men that I was working with about how this other young man had found his first girlfriend, and he was a little bit younger, and they were a little kind of, happy for him, but feeling a little sad for themselves because they hadn't had that experience yet. And I said, but guys, he met this girl because he went out and joined this activity. If nobody's going to come to your door and be like, knock, 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 here I am, I would so love to be your dating partner. It just doesn't work that way, right? You got to get out there, try different things that you're interested in. If you have a common interest, it's going to be so much easier for the 2 of you guys to kind of just hit it off. And that common thing can be autism, even if it's, it doesn't, but absolutely, go out there into the world with the intention of trying new things. Being yourself. It's okay to be scared. Everybody is scared at first. That's the way,
Ain't that the truth? When I went on my first date with my girlfriend, or one of my first dates, we were at this beautiful beach restaurant in Malibu, and I was sweating inside. I was so nervous, and I was so nervous inside, but on the outside, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a lovely lunch. And I don't know why, on that day, I just felt something so powerful, and it was something I never felt before. And I'm just like, I don't want to let this girl go anytime soon. And my girlfriend's name is Andrea, by the way. So I'm just like, I don't want to let Andrea go at any second. And so when, and then literally like a week later, that was when we had our fourth date, which was the fourth date that I was talking about on the show at LACMA.
Yes.
And then the day after, we had our first kiss. And it was just like, I knew right then and there, I was like, I don't need to see anybody else. I feel like this is the one. But at the end of the day, you also have to try new things, because I hadn't really tried new things at all until I met Andrea. And a lot of new things. I hadn't even had Korean barbecue until then. And what my parents had tried to do with me for 28 years, my girlfriend did that in just 2 months. And my parents are literally just like, who are you?
I'm a man in love, is what I am.
That's exactly what I said. I'm madly in love with this girl, you guys.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing. I love that. And I've had people say to me, oh, like, I've got to get on the show so I can find love. It doesn't work out.
No.
And you can get cast on the show and still it doesn't work out. Like, there's no guarantee, right? So you have, like, you should not be thinking of it that way. It shouldn't be like, unless I work with Jennifer or unless I'm on the show, like, I'm not gonna. That's just not the way it works. It's just not. Yeah, that's not reality. But I think the best thing that you can be doing to practice before, before having a romantic relationship is really making sure that you know what is part of a good friendship. Yeah. And knowing how to be a good friend, right? Yes. And if you notice you have challenges with that, then probably those are the challenges that you're going to need to work out anyway before you get into a romantic relationship.
You definitely got that right. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You definitely got that right, for sure. So we pretty much saw you working around the clock on the show, and your advice really paid off for the main cast members of the show. Did you get a chance to work with all the main cast members from the show, or was it just the ones that we saw on TV, which was Abby and Sabode, which, by the way, Abby and Sabode are absolutely amazing people. I hung out with them plenty of times. They're amazing.
Very, very much so. No, didn't get to work with everybody. It was sort of people who wanted to work with a coach. We've done like off-camera work with, I know Danny, for instance, like, because we did off-camera work. So not everything that gets filmed always gets on. That's part of the course with Hollywood,
That's part of the deal. That's the part of the deal that we signed up to do.
Absolutely, yeah, because you could be on there and it's like, you were great, thanks so much, can't fit it. That's just the way. Peace out. Exactly right, Evan. So yeah, and it's a combination then of who wants to work with a counselor or a coach, and then who the team also thinks might need a little extra coaching, And like Sabode's mom, when she set up and the producers, but when they set up the whole backyard and everything, it was so precious. It was great. So
Sabode's family is amazing. Oh my gosh.
Don't you just want to adopt them all? I want to adopt them all.
No, they're amazing too. And I've actually gotten to know more of the Lost family down here. We've hung out quite a bit of times, which has been absolutely amazing. So in a way, really nice. What Ian and the producers have done is kind of made this little family, which is something that I would have never expected to be a part of, especially since I was only on one episode. But what was your favorite part about shooting season 1 of Love on the Spectrum U.S.?
What was my favorite part about it? Golly, that's a good question. I think, seeing the reality of it all come together, the artistry of them putting together the show, I think that was fascinating to me. So from a very creative standpoint, was really watching them take what had just been, the million times that I walked up to a door and knocked on it, because literally it'd be 6 times. Now, okay, ready? Now walk this direction. Now walk that direction. But then they artfully, it would come together to be something very real. Yes, it is unscripted, right? That is 100% unscripted.
Yeah.
We still get that question. How did you learn your lines? I didn't.
We weren't provided a script. This just came all out of the mouth unexpectedly.
That's exactly right. You do your thing. So yeah, I would say the actual creation of the show and watching them put together what they did and then getting to see it and just being absolutely wowed by I thought it was so beautiful what they ended up putting together. And obviously others did too, because they did very, very well they should have.
Yes, absolutely. So Love on the Spectrum U.S. premiered in May 2022 to a massive audience and was in the top 10 most watched Netflix shows for several weeks around the world. What was your reaction to the success of the U.S. version of Love on the Spectrum?
Crazy! It was so fun. It was a bit of a blur. I was actually visiting Disney at the time, and my husband had COVID, and I was there with my children and stepchildren, so it was insane. So it was a little bit, but that's okay. It's all good. It's all good. But it was so exciting, and doing the press afterwards, when it was all coming out, to just getting to talk to real people out there, and hearing how much of a need there was.
Yes.
Right? I just really don't think I realized the depth of loneliness that's out there, and that breaks my heart.
Yes.
Right? And I think what feels really nice is that I feel like a lot of people connected with us on the show in very human ways, and I love that. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, and especially seeing a show that's so focused around autistic people, and not just their daily lives, but their lives and their, the lives of them as they go throughout their regular day.
Yeah.
I have known Danny Bowman for 10 years and have literally watched her grow up from the time that she was like a high school graduate to now about to turn 30 in a few years. And just the way that she has carried herself and the way that her and her uncle have on the show was really exciting to watch, and the amazing opportunities that not only that she got, but all of the other cast members got from the show. For me, that was priceless, and just seeing how people actually recognize them from the show is incredible. So in addition to your busy professional life as an author, as a public speaker, a panelist, and as this dating expert, I hear that you've actually found love yourself and you were able to start a family of your own. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I am in the middle of because it is chaos sometimes. But my husband and I, so we're a blended family. We have between us 7 kids. Seven kids, but I know, but only 3 of us. With actually 2, because one's now in college. We've got they range from 13 to 22. So we've got a bunch of them. So several. We have 1 in grad school, 2 in college, a whole bunch in high school. Yeah, it's but anyway, it's funny because my first husband and I are still very good friends, and he is autistic, and my second husband is too.
Wow. So you got the whole autistic family.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
We're, like I said, we're overachievers, so we wouldn't know how. My husband and I actually met at an autism conference. So
really?
Yeah, he came to the conference to hear Temple speak. I'd love to say it was to hear me speak, but it wasn't, because I was talking about women on the spectrum, and it didn't really relate to him. But that's
I'm sure it was probably to watch you speak.
Afterwards, but at first, no, but yeah, and we hit it off because we knew that our kids were about the same age and had the same special interests. And so we thought, great, let's get them together and hang out. And they were very into Disney Once Upon a Time at that time. That was like their big thing. So yeah.
Disney, you can never go wrong with Disney. My girlfriend and I absolutely love Disney. That is literally like our go-to place. Like, we were just at Disneyland back in May, and I kid you not, I get so excited around just the fun of being there, and for some reason she's into me getting super excited, and that's the. Yeah, no, and it is, and it's interesting because my girlfriend's actually not autistic. She's neurotypical like everyone else, but she's taken the time to really better understand what autism actually is. And, being around, all my autistic friends, especially from the ones on the show, it's really been nice for her to understand how it actually is. And sometimes it's hard to kind of communicate that, but at the end of the day, it's all worth it. It's so worth it at the end of the day, because she loves me, autistic or not, and that's the best kind of gift that there is. So besides besides the wonderful Sesame Street book that you got coming out next month, what are some other up-and-coming projects that you have planned that you'd love to share with us?
Right, there's the Julia book, there's the congressional thing that I'm doing next month.
Yes.
And yeah, so there's like that's kind of all of that right now. And then so what I started doing also after the show is I started doing virtual coaching. Yeah, well, because there were so many requests from people, so that's been really
for
neat
very
too.
good reason.
Oh well, thank you. So that kind of fills in the blanks, and then it's back to school time.
Oh yeah, that back to school time when all the kids are sent back to a quote unquote kid prison. How we do not miss those days.
Understood. Understood. I really do. That's why I homeschooled my kids for a while. So yeah.
And then my last question to you, Jennifer, is this. You're an inspiration to all of us on the spectrum, and you've paved the way for others to follow their own passions and their paths in life. What would you like to say to all those autistic children and adults out there that are trying to figure out how to blaze their own trails like you have?
I think that it all boils down to we so frequently mix up the idea of normal and typical, right? They're not synonyms. They are not the same word. They do not mean the same thing. And it is so important to remember that being less typical just means happening less. It doesn't mean less valid. It doesn't mean less awesome. It doesn't mean less lovable. And I think that if we can reiterate that, hear that, and really buy into that, then it all kind of comes down to the fact that before and after everything else, we are all on the human spectrum. And that's what matters most.
The human spectrum, that I think pretty much says it all. Well, listen, you are an absolute delight to have on. And I hate that we had to wait a year and almost a half after Love on the Spectrum to finally meet. Please come back to this podcast anytime. You are always more than welcome. I would, there's a lot of projects coming up for the both of us, and I would love to share your input on anything autism related. If you like what you heard in this episode, make sure that you comment, like, and subscribe. You can find all this episode and all of our other episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can also find us on YouTube. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Autistically Unapologetic. I'm Devin Morrissey, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Autistically Unapologetic with Devin Morrissey. If you like what you hear and you want to see more, don't forget to rate and subscribe to stay tuned for future episodes. Again, thanks for listening.